Welcome to part 1 of derivative exam questions. If you would like more content like this, hit the subscribe button. Now let's get started with our first question. What is the derivative of x over cos x? Now, in this question, it is asking us to find the derivative of x over cos x. So let's write this down to support our working out. D over dx, open bracket, x divided by cos x, close bracket. For this question, we are going to use the quotient rule. So what is the derivative of cos x? The derivative of cos x is equal to minus sine x. Keep this rule in mind as we will use this a lot in this video. So now let's begin writing our working out. The derivative of x is 1, so we can write 1 times cos x minus cos x, which is going to become minus sine x because we derive it, times by x. Now, in the quotient rule, we always square the denominator of the fraction. So, to support our working out, we will divide this by cos squared x, since the denominator is squared. Now let's simplify this. 1 times cos x is simply cos x, minus x times minus sine x is plus x sine x. Now, divide this by cos x squared, and your final answer will be cos x plus x sine x divided by cos squared x. Now let's relate this to the options given in the question. Looking at option A, we can see that it is identical to our result we have concluded from our working out. Therefore, the correct answer will be A. Now on to our next question. What is the value of the derivative of y is equal to 2 sine 3x minus 3 tan x at x is equal to 0? So for this question, they are also asking to find the derivative. The derivative of 2 sine 3x minus 3 tan x. So what is the derivative of 2 sine 3x? The derivative of 2 sine 3x would be the derivative of 3x, which is 3, times by 2, which is equal to 6. And now you keep the rest of the term the same. So the derivative will be 6 cos 3x. So let's start writing our working out. Dy over dx will be equal to 6 cos 3x. Now, what is the derivative of minus 3 tan x? The derivative of a tan function will always be sec squared x. So in this case, leaving the 3 as a constant term times by our function, we can write the derivative will be 3 sec squared x. So let's write this in our working out. Keep in mind the sign will be minus as given in the y equation. So dy over dx will be equal to 6 cos 3x minus 3 sec squared x. Now looking at the question, it says to evaluate for x is equal to 0. So sub 0 back into the derivative function. 6 cos 3 times by 0 minus 3 sec squared times by 0. Now, you can either evaluate this in your head or you can use a calculator. 6 cos 3 times 0 will be equal to 6 minus 3 sec squared 0, which is equal to 3 times 1. So your final answer will be 3. Now looking at the options, this answer corresponds to option C, which is correct. Now on to our next question. Differentiate with respect to x, cos x over x squared. So let's start writing our working out. D over dx, open bracket, cos x divided by x squared, close bracket. Remember in our previous questions, we found out the rule to derive cos x. To derive cos x, the derivative of cos x will always be minus sine x. So in this case, we can simply write the derivative of cos x is equal to minus sine x. Now, let's derive the denominator, which is x squared. The derivative of x squared is simply 2x, because we times and then take. So in our working out, using the quotient rule, we can find out the differentiation of this term. So let's write down our working out. X squared times by minus sine x, because we differentiate cos x first, minus cos x, and then times that by 2x, because we differentiate x squared. Now, whenever using the quotient rule, we always square the denominator. X squared and then squared again is simply x to the power of 4. Now let's simplify this. X, as you can see, there is a common term of x in the numerator and the denominator. So let's take away an x and cancel it in the denominator. Now, let's simplify this. X times minus sine x will give you minus x sine x. And then minus 2 times cos x is minus 2 cos x, divided by x cubed, since we cancelled out a x to the power of 1 in the previous step. On to our next question. Find the equation of the tangent to the curve y is equal to cos 2x at the point whose coordinates are pi over 6. So for these questions, to find the equation of the tangent, you must find the gradient function. To find the gradient function, we must derive cos 2x. To derive cos x, it is minus sine x. Since there is a 2 in front of the x, we times it at the front, which will give you minus 2 sine 2x. In the question, the x coordinate is pi over 6. So let's sub this back into our gradient equation. Minus 2 sine 2 times pi over 6. Now, you can either put this into your calculator or you can solve this into your head. This should give you a result of minus root 3. Now, since we have our gradient for the single point, we must know which points to put the equation into. Now, to find the y component of our coordinate, let's sub pi over 6 back into our y equation. So subbing pi over 6 back in, we get the y value as a half. Therefore, our coordinate will be pi over 6, comma, half. Using this information, we can find out the equation of the tangent to the curve at the point pi over 6. Because we know our x1 value is pi over 6 and our y1 value is a half. To find the equation of a tangent, we can simply use y minus y1 is equal to m times x minus x1. Now looking at our working out, we have all the required values. We have the value of x1 and y1 and m. So let's begin. Y minus y1, which is a half, will be equal to m, which is minus root 3, open bracket, x minus x1. We know the value of x1, which is pi over 6, so let's write down x minus pi over 6. Now, let's simplify this. Y will be equal to minus root 3 times x, which is minus root 3x, and then minus root 3 times by minus pi over 6 is plus root 3 pi over 6. Keep in mind the pi will not come under the root because we are simply timesing the values. Now let's bring the half over to the other side. This should give you a value of y is equal to minus x root 3 plus, now you can either write more working out for this step, or you can calculate this in a calculator or your head. By equating the result, we can find out that the equation of the tangent at the point pi over 6 will be equal to y is equal to minus x root 3 plus 3 plus root 3 pi over 6. Now let's try a different question. Differentiate with respect to x 1 plus sine x to the power of 5. Now for your working out, your first step should always show you are differentiating the given value. So let's write this down. D over dx, open bracket, 1 plus sine x, close bracket, to the power of 5. So let's find out the value of the derivative of 1 plus sine x. The derivative of sine x, as we have seen in previous questions, is always cos x. The derivative of any constant is 0. In this case, we have a constant of 1, so we can simply ignore it. So let's write this down. Remember, when deriving an equation, we must always times and then take. So let's times the 5. So it will be 5 cos x, and then you keep the inside the same, 1 plus sine x, close bracket, and since we have times, we must take 1 away now. So 5 minus 1. This should give you a value of 4. This will be your final answer for this question. In our next question, differentiate with respect to x, 1 plus tan x to the power of 10. Now, what is the derivative of 1 plus tan x? You must always remember this rule. The derivative of tan x is always going to be sec squared x. The derivative of any constant will always be 0. Looking at what we are deriving, which is 1 plus tan x, we have a constant of 1, so we can simply ignore this. Therefore, by differentiating 1 plus tan x, we get sec squared x. So whenever deriving, we always times first. So it will be 10 times the differentiation of the value inside of the brackets, which is sec squared x, and then open bracket. Now, you always keep the inside the same. So it would be 1 plus tan x, close bracket. Now just like the previous question, we have first times the 10, now we must minus 1 from it. This should give you a value of 9. In our next, now pause the video and try this question yourself, and then play the video and see if you get the same answer as me. Differentiate with respect to x, x sine x. To derive x sine x, we must know how to derive x and how to derive sine x. To derive sine x, it will always be equal to cos x. This is a rule that will be used a lot in exam questions. Now, how do you derive x? To derive x, it is simply 1. Now, since we know our values, let's start writing our working out. D over dx of x sine x will be equal to 1 times sine x plus the derivative of sine x, which we now know is cos x times by x. Now, let's simplify this. 1 times sine x is simply sine x. So it would be sine x plus x times cos x. X times cos x is x cos x. This will be your final answer for this question. In our next question, it says to differentiate x squared tan x. Like previous questions, we must know how to derive x squared and how to derive tan x. Try this question yourself and let me know in the comments if you got this question right. The derivative of tan x, as we know from previous questions, is always going to be sec squared x. Remember, in exams, this may be a common question. They will always ask you to derive trig functions. The derivative of x squared is fairly simple and will be equal to 2x. So let's sub this into our derivative function. So it would be the derivative of x squared, which is 2x times tan x plus x squared times the derivative of tan x, which is equal to sec squared x. Now, let's simplify this. 2x times tan x is simply 2x tan x plus x squared times sec squared x. X squared times sec squared x is simply x squared sec squared x. For this question, there is no further simplification needed. You can leave your final answer like this and it will be marked correct. Now try this question. Differentiate cos x over x with respect to dx. For this question, we must know how to differentiate cos x and how to differentiate x. The derivative of cos x is minus sine x. I am telling you multiple times, we must always remember this rule. So now that we know the derivative of cos x is equal to minus sine x, now we must know how to derive x. The derivative of x will always be equal to 1. Now let's start using quotient rule to solve this problem. So it would be x times the derivative of cos x, which is minus sine x, minus cos x times the derivative of x, which is 1. Now, in the quotient rule, we must always square the denominator. Looking at the denominator, we know it is x. So now we must square x. This will equate to x squared. Now let's simplify this. We times x by minus sine x, which will give you a value of minus x sine x, minus 1 times cos x. 1 times cos x is simply cos x. Now divide this by x squared, and this will be your final answer. Hope you enjoyed today's video, and don't forget to subscribe and smash that like button. If you want more like this, comment what question was your favorite.